on Watergap's motion to vacate the stay, and if the stay would not be vacated, to require the objectors to post an appeal bond. Judge Zulik, by telephone conference yesterday, said that that requires testimony from third parties. It's not merely argument by lawyers.
Right.
And consequently, he needs to take testimony, and he will be scheduling the matter for a hearing later in June, when hopefully people will be able to go to the courthouse.
Yeah. Okay.
So the matter's still pending. It's still out there. Now, I don't know about what's happening with the hybrid Delaware Water Gap thing that's occurring, where some people are at the hotel and then they go to Judge or Dr. Morrow's office for treatment, then they go back to the hotel. That's a whole nother issue. I'm talking about the initial Water Gap matter is still all up in the air.
Okay. All right, so Scott, it's up to you you want to get it started.
It is. One thing before we get started, is the township are the other township offices operating normally at all? The inspections at Ken Wolf and that kind of stuff, are they doing anything?
Yeah.
Anybody know?
Yeah, most of those things are back to normal. We're still not open to the public. People can come in by appointment, and we have a ring that, it doesn't record anything, but
Okay.
press it and we can come down. But most people aren't really coming in. There's appointments for permits and whatnot.
Okay. Because I have one thing then, Jake, that you or Robert or whoever can send me something about later. I have a neighbor here who in the middle of all this has connected a house to his unfinished septic while everybody was away and not looking. So I'll talk to you about that at another time then. Okay, at least it's up and running. I didn't want to say anything. I don't want to try to see if get anybody out before it was operating. So
Sure. Absolutely.
All right, 7:02. I say we call this meeting to order. I don't frankly know how we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, so forgive me all. We bypassed the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. There was a revised agenda that I sent around. I added a couple of things from a couple of John Tressler's letters that came in, and from the Monroe County Planning Commission. So I don't see anybody that is not the public, so there probably aren't any comments on this agenda. We have no plans. So I say we go down and sort of launch into it. Let's see what we can do to dispose of the first couple of items. John, I guess we got a new plan submission from Verizon Wireless through Magic Cauldron.
That is correct.
Okay. Now the letter, everybody get that one? Everybody get that one? Okay. I guess we have a plan that's been submitted, and you've looked it over, John, and I guess it's ready for your formal review. Is that how I gather this?
Yeah, that's correct. The Planning Commission just has to move to accept it.
Okay.
And then we will get a formal review out within the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Can you explain what it is? Is this the same one we saw a year ago?
Or
Yes.
longer, yeah.
It's basically on the Verizon property,
Okay.
no?
Yes. It's over there in the industrial zone. Yes, that's correct. And it's a monopole cell tower thing. Yeah, Dave, I think it is.
So why are we looking at it again? Didn't the supervisors act on it?
That was a conditional use, Dave. Now they're in for land development.
Oh, okay. So
Okay.
they got their conditional use approved.
Okay.
I believe the court ordered it.
Okay.
Ron can speak to that better than me.
How is it the court ordered it? Robert, maybe.
The
Hi.
township denied the application.
Mhm.
Verizon took an appeal, and the federal judge said the appeal was wrong and it should have been granted. So the conditional use has now been approved by federal court order.
Did the
Oh,
township,
under the federal aviation material, is that how they got up there?
Well, the federal Telecom Act, there,
The Telecom Act,
Telecommunications
okay.
Act
Okay.
of, I think, 1996, something like that.
but where does that leave us with our own ordinance that prohibits obstructions within a certain distance of the flight path of aircraft?
It was engineered and Mr. Tressler, I believe, reviewed that. And it was determined that this pole is not in the flight path of any planes.
Except for the medevac helicopter, which flies in and out every which way.
Well, that
That
may
could be
well be,
argued
but
anywhere.
that wasn't that was
sorry
not
to-
in an engineering report.
I'm sorry to be in here late, but I can understand what's going on. And we've been through this for several months. Unfortunately, we lost the case in federal court based on the narrow interpretation of an FAA rule. However, the question is still before us about safety. And it's both a question of absolute safety for people who are parachute school enthusiasts, medevac, and it's also a question of liability for the township. So
Okay.
we've asked for independent studies to show what the breakaway capability of this tower is. And I think once we get that information, we can proceed with the land use hearings.
But
So-
from our standpoint tonight, all we're doing would be to make a motion to accept the submitted plan so that the review process can start. Is that right,
Exactly.
Ron? That's what we need. Yeah, right. Right,
So
Ron?
moved.
Yes, that is correct.
I heard
Second,
it. I heard it so moved. Who did it first? Was that Doug?
Michael,
Michael. Okay.
and then Bob.
And Bob was a second on that. Any other discussion, gentlemen?
So what is St. James's letter doing? Just
Oh, okay. Yeah,
saying that they've got it, right?
Yeah,
There's no review or
Dave.
anything.
Yeah, Dave. It's just that the plans were submitted along with the all of the stuff that we would otherwise see in the land development plan, the erosion and sedimentation report, the post-construction stormwater management site evaluation, and a land development plan of, it looks like 7 sheets that they submitted back on March 16th. So the
Right.
formal, so it looks like it's complete in order to be reviewed.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Will we have one more shot at it as a submittal?
Oh, yes. This is
as
just to
planning
review it.
commission?
Yeah, this is just to review it.
This is just an acceptance of the procedure for acceptance of the submittal.
That's
Am I right?
correct. That's right.
Ron, am I right?
Yes, you are. John will review, as he said, the overall plan in 2 weeks, and that review will then be submitted for planning commission's review at the next month's meeting or whatever meeting may be coming up. There are time limits that are running on these things, and I can
Right.
tell you that the applicant will not grant the township any extra time, and they will litigate if they believe that the township is delaying this as they did with their other matter. So
And Robert,
I would
Sorry.
imagine by next month, there'll be a review letter that you can discuss.
Okay.
and Robert, would you have input from outside experts vis-a-vis the aircraft situation?
We have asked for that, yes.
Okay. You
Okay.
think you'll have it by the next time we meet?
I hope so.
Okay,
We told the applicants that we need it, so.
okay.
All right. Then in that instance, any other discussion? All right, so we have a motion to accept the plan for review by Doug, and it's seconded by
No, I
Bob.
did not, I did
I
not.
thought you
move.
did it. Oh, I'm
David
sorry,
moved.
Michael. Michael did, pardon
Oh,
me.
Michael did, sorry.
Michael did, pardon me. Moved by Michael Albert, seconded by Robert Bozis. We've had our discussion, and all in favor of accepting the plan for
Aye.
review?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so moved. So that one's out of the way. Okay, next. The other thing that came in was, I don't even know if we need to necessarily do anything with it. I just wanted to make sure we had it on there. The township received on May 12th a letter from the Monroe County Planning Commission dealing with the Planning Commission's review of our proposed changes for the economic development zone that we submitted and the district map. Ron, question for you, if I may. Do we need to do anything further with this? This is just the county planning commission review. Do we have to do anything else with it?
Well, if I recall correctly, and I may be wrong, but I believe that the commission had reviewed these economic development amendments before. In fact, I believe that you, Mr. Chair, had
Yeah,
an issue with one or two of them.
I
Now,
think so. Let me,
do you want to re-review it again? And I'm not trying to make more work for you guys based upon the fact that we now have the Monroe County Planning Commission review that just came in. We have Judy Stearns Goldstein's response to that Monroe County
Right.
review. We have Mr. DePietris's response to the Monroe County review. So do you want to review all of those responses and then re-review the amendments? That's your call. But I believe you've already reviewed it one time, although I don't remember all the recommendations, if any.
no, I remember that. I remember we did go through it. We passed it along to the supervisors. Michael, did you just raise your hand? I can't. It's hard. This is hard.
Yeah,
Did you have something
no,
you want to say? Yeah.
I did. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding as well. I mean, we reviewed this before the track changes comments, which are presently in it,
Yes.
were made. So, I mean, I would argue we could not repeat what we've already said in our last review and make sure that the supervisors take that into account. But if there are any issues
Oh, I'm losing you, Michael.
or changes been made, that those be discussed
Michael,
now.
Michael, hang on one
And
second.
before we do that, I just want to ask, yeah,
You digitized out there for about 2 seconds. What did you just say?
oh crap.
I know that's the problem with this. That's why I didn't like it in the first place.
No, that's all right. I just wanted to say that we should just look at the changes that have been made to see if there's any concerns with those. And that we should reference our initial review of the document as well. But I did also want to ask, does the DePetris group feel that with these changes that they have inserted, and there's not that many, do they feel that they can move forward with their project?
Doug, I'll let you answer that.
With the proposed changes that we had submitted to the township, we feel that yes, we would be able to proceed with our project as we presented, in an informal format. And then if these zoning changes go through, then we will charge full speed ahead in preparing full land development plan revisions to what was already approved to the township for a new review.
This is Ron Karasek. Just remember, however, what we're talking about now is the economic development zone amendments. There are also other amendments pending that are on your agenda that deal with the mixed use development project. They also deal with the incentivized development project. So those amendments also are on the table to be discussed and reviewed. And I think that those are as important to be adopted as the ED zone in order to have Mr. DePetris proceed.
That's
Right.
next. That's the next thing, Ron. That's where we're getting to. I just want to make sure we don't have anything else that we want to do with the Planning Commission's review letter, because I don't have anything to add.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make clear, like, we had made a recommendation when the DePetris group came forward and said, we're thinking about changing our plan a little bit. We as a planning commission planning commission members had suggested, well, we already have this new ordinance in the mix.
Yes.
And maybe some modifications to that would allow you to largely do most of what you've done. And it appears that that is what has happened. So I just want to make sure everyone was on the same table.
All right.
I am not. It's my understanding they want all three amendments to be adopted.
No. I'm talking about the Planning Commission review letter. I'm only going there. I'm not the next thing.
What Mr. Albert said, that one amendment takes care of everything for DePetris. It's not my understanding. They need the ED amendment. They need the amendment to the overall overlay zone, and they need a most recent amendment simply for parking in the front of the project, that they need to have that adopted immediately. So
That is correct, Ron. So if that was a misunderstanding from what I thought Michael was trying to portray, but I agree with you, Ron, that all three of them need to be passed in order for us to do what we want to do.
Okay.
Can I just then confirm the one that we had already reviewed is the one, none of them have ordinance numbers, unfortunately. Which attachment was that?
I don't know what attachment it was, but
I'm
it
not
was
sure what
the
yeah.
economic development zone It was the ordinance that was prepared by Attorney Judy Goldstein Stern for the township, and that's the one you had reviewed. You have not yet reviewed the ones dealing with the zoning changes to the mixed-use development or the incentivized overlay option.
Now, we may have, excuse me, Ron, we may have reviewed those things, but did we ever vote on sending them along? Scott?
I'm almost certain we did, actually.
Yes, we did, but
you
not
did?
with the
Okay.
minor changes.
We did.
But not.
We
with
added
the
a few, there were a few, in fact, yeah, that was the one. There were a few minor technical changes. And we
Right.
had a discussion with Ron about it, so we didn't think we needed to send it all the way back and forward it all again to get it onto the supervisors so they can schedule their public hearing
Okay, so
has to
that's
occur.
that's the underlying ordinance amendment, Ron. That's the one that's
Yes.
the ED, known as the ED amendment.
Yeah,
I
it's
understand that.
attachment 7.
Right,
Attachment
that Judy
7.
Goldstein prepared and we basically gave the nod to.
Right, that I understand.
The supervisors have yet to act. Am I correct, Robert?
Correct.
Yes, and the reason we haven't is because these two other amendment questions have come up, which we want to bring to you. So we'll do it all at once. That's our hope.
Right.
And when will we see have we actually seen the final form of those?
Yes, we have, and it's what's going to be presented to you.
Tonight?
I believe Lois had sent those copies because I took.
She did. Yeah, we got it. Yeah.
I printed out all 25 pages.
Yep.
All right, then I don't think we have anything then extra to do on B on the revised agenda. Let's move on to C. The zoning changes, that gateway.
Wait. What do you mean we don't have anything to do?
We already reviewed it and passed it on to the supervisors. We just need to move on to the next thing.
But there's been changes made to it, so we were being asked to review it again, and I thought we were just gonna.
I don't think we were asked to review it again.
That's C, but go ahead.
C is the new stuff with the additional changes in it. I was only talking about the letter, Michael, from the Monroe County Planning Commission that came in.
Oh, the letter, of course. I'm sorry. I thought you were already.
Yeah, I'm not moving on to, now we can move on to the next thing.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's the next part. This is the gateway, the gateway proposed ordinance amendments that were sent around. We printed out along with the May 6 Boucher and James review letter that we have that went over and some of John Tressler's comments. I'm going to say this at the beginning. I think that this is a mighty poor tool using Zoom for something like ordinance amendments and proposals. These are frankly matters that need a better public forum than what we have here. But with that said, it seems like we're been directed to move ahead with it. But I am going to tell you right now, I don't like this in the least. So
and where would that directive have come from?
They made some changes in Harrisburg to allow these sorts of to allow these kinds of things during the pandemic crisis part of it. Like I said, I frankly don't like it for these things. I mean, I don't mind it for things like, paying, salt contracts and, and letting, road pavings and those sorts of things. But it's a public policy matter. And I think it deserves a better hearing than that. And I'm going to say it right now to the DePetris group. I think it deserves a better hearing. We already did this once, and I know that. We went through this a couple of years ago. And now we have a new set of them. All this while, we actually don't have a submitted plan to review along with this. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why we keep going back to look at our ordinances over which we've done an awful lot of work and time and not had a land development plan for this. And every time we do it, it seems to change. Oh, now we need to change our ordinances again. Why are we changing our ordinances? We don't have a plan to act on. And if this doesn't ever go through, all we have is a changed ordinance for a plan that never occurred. So I actually, in that instance, have a great deal of problem with the way this is proceeding. Now, with that said, we have John's letter, and we should probably go through this then. So John, why don't we go through the your May 6 letter on the proposed changes?
Yeah, if I can pull it up, I have the ordinances on my screen. Fortunately, I don't have my letter.
Hang on a second here. You want me to send it? You want me to email it back to you? I probably have it.
Yeah, if you could.
Yeah, give me a second here. Let me get to it because Lois sent it out.
May 6th, I think.
Yeah, the letter is May 6th, but that isn't, I'm looking for the email that Lois sent with it, which I think it's, no, that's the Planning Commission, Monroe County Planning Commission. I'm looking for the one with the,
It's titled.
it has like 5 attachments.
No, this one only has one.
Only has one?
It's
Okay.
from Lois. It's dated May 21st, 3:24 p.m. 2020-05-2115-1405.pdf is the title.
1405, there it is. Okay. Okay, let's do this because sometimes it doesn't like to do it that way. So give me a second.
Mr. Amora, are we allowed to get a copy of that also?
You should have had it probably by now. Didn't they give it to you?
I don't remember receiving it.
I'm not
Okay.
sure if I've seen it either. I mean, I've probably seen it, but I don't think I have that, at least
Yeah.
not at that date.
Well, Doug, you were copied on it anyway. So let me.
All
give me a
right, if I was copied on it.
Hang on. No, let me
my-
give me a second here. Hang on.
My bad.
No, it's not a matter of that.
If you're sending it to John, send it to Doug too, right?
Heck, send it to everybody.
Send it to everybody.
I think I did, but all right.
What's the name of the file?
It ends in 1405. It's a PDF that ends in 1405.
Oh, I found it.
Well, I mean, this is the what is it about again?
This is his review letter from May 6th.
Okay.
Review letter.
While you're doing that, Mr. Chair, I'll go see if I can forward my email to those guys too.
Okay.
If they get both, they get both. They can throw one away.
Yeah, John, I think I went through to you already. Okay, take a look.
Okay, I just found it on my own.
Okay,
But let me.
Is this
check
you're
to
saying
see if
James'
yours
letter of
came
May
through.
6th? Is that what we're
that's
talking
correct.
about?
Yeah, that's the one, Dave.
Okay, yeah, I got it.
It did not come through, but
Okay, well, Gmail's gonna take a moment, I guess.
David, are you doing this on a separate screen, separate computer?
Yes, I got 2 screens. I actually have
Okay.
3 screens going.
I
I
just
can see 'em.
All right, John, you wanna get started here?
just a second.
Okay, I heard something.
Yeah, somebody's got a bird in the background.
That's me.
That sounds like a chickadee.
I have lots of them. I'll tell you this. This is actually the first year I've had a pileated woodpecker that keeps coming.
Oh, yeah.
That actually comes to my suet feeder over my what's my left shoulder over here, and it lands right next to my dining room. It's pretty wild, actually.
That's Woody.
That's not a woodpecker. That's me.
Yeah, it is. It's big. It's big.
Is John going to walk us through this?
Yeah, I want him to.
Okay, I don't know if you all have a copy. I have the copy that Scott just forwarded to me.
Yep.
The first 2 comments are they're just some housekeeping comments. My comment number 3, that the changes that have been made, section 305.2.B.2 now states that land under common ownership and separated by a public street will be considered contiguous. And my And I think we all know that Smithfield Gateway does own property on both sides of the road. I think we knew that before, and I don't think we had a problem with this. My only comment is that there's at least one other property in the township that this ordinance will affect, if not two. I did not take the time to see if they are bisected by a public road or not, or even if it isn't now, could they acquire some land in the future and then want to also marry that into their development? I'm not suggesting that's a bad thing. It might be a good thing, but that's something you have to consider when adopting this.
If they go
John,
into,
can I back up for a moment?
Go ahead.
Sure.
Karasek, on the number 1, it says the
Mhm.
mixed-use developments will now permit one-family detached dwelling.
I have it circled.
I thought that was pulled based
Yep.
upon the provisions of Doug that were done on like May 13 or so, or am I
Okay.
thinking of something different?
No, you're not. They,
So
they, they were pulled.
Okay.
So
So that's out.
single-family detached dwellings are no longer part of this amendment.
That is correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Okay. Because that actually was a major concern of mine.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I had that one circled as well. All right, good. The only thing that I say about the under common ownership is it should, if it's going to be that way and they're going to treat it to develop it all as one, whether or not there's a roadway in the middle, then it has to stay under common ownership. So it shouldn't then otherwise be subdivided off on one side of the road or the other. Your thoughts?
Now with you all.
I think there's actually language in there that even if in the ordinance that even if there was some minor changes based on, a condominium sale of a lot within the overall project, that there still has to be legal documents in place that keep them as part of the overall project and wouldn't be able to be sold off, separately and totally removed once a project has been approved as an overall item. So that if there's any shared expenses and responsibilities to go along with same, that those items would be there. But I think there's already language in the ordinance that addresses that.
Well, but it should be a deed restriction. Just like you would in any other type of subdivision that you want to keep as part of a common scheme. And it should be inserted as a deed restriction, so it can't be removed later on when you change an ordinance.
Doug, what in particular would this, be dealing with in terms of deed restrictions?
That
We're certainly going to control the overall project and make sure that there is a harmonious development.
I'm not worried about you, Jim. I'm worried about 3 owners down.
Right.
I know you're going to try to develop it all as one parcel because that's all what we've been talking about for all the, for the last set of years. But at some point, these things are going to be owned by somebody else.
Well, Scott, not that I'm an advocate for the developer, because I'm not, but I guess the question that comes to mind is, and I don't know how you control this, we'd have to talk about it, but if in fact the development is built and is up and operating, does it make a difference whether someone else owns one portion versus another?
Yeah.
Well, excuse me, but our experience has been yes.
Yeah.
Just witness Ivy Ridge and, some of those fairly recent developments where bankruptcies and bank bailouts led to refinance and
pieces cut off.
Sale of pieces at 50% their original value. So those are disasters
Mhm.
And that's what we're looking at now. And then suddenly, the other thing I'll point out is that this project went from being a 30% residential project to now what amounts to a 60 or 65% residential project. And I don't know how deed covenants or anything else are going to prevent or control the tendencies of families with school-aged children. And that's like the opposite of what the original intent was.
Right. Doug, I don't think that's an accurate statement. We have a lot of other ground that will be commercial.
Yeah, I know that. That's what it looks like,
So
yeah.
There's a lot of other ground, so it's not a residential project.
Except that now that,
It has a significant residential component, Jim.
yeah, like 600 apartments.
Yeah, it does.
No, there's 500 total residential units, total, including the 236 that were approved before,
Originally.
and 200 that are age restricted.
Right.
Sorry, what does that have to do with this particular, Doug, the residential? I know we're off on a tangent maybe now on residential, because I'm not sure that's related to this particular issue of
So-
things sticking
Oh,
with
we
the
were
deed.
talking about a deed restriction.
In reference to what? What would a deed restriction be in reference to?
That the parcel should not be further subdivided. There it is. You can put that right in. Or you can put it on your recorded, you can even put it on your recorded map. You can do that as well. That's a validly enforceable
I'm not sure.
chain of title as well.
There are large properties off of the Loop Road that may be developed or may be sold. So why would we agree not to have other subdivided lots that, meet ordinance and are developed and approved by the township?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand that.
I don't either. You haven't given us a plan.
Well, there is a plan that shows the same loop road, and, there's all the acreage that's alongside of it. So I'm not,
Jim,
No.
that's not a plan. That is a drawing that can become part of the base of a plan.
now that plan was approved by Smithfield Township, and that loop road is very much on record. I'm not sure.
Scott, the
It's-
most recent proposal as far as a change to phase 1B with the joint commercial and residential
Mhm.
within the same structures, you're right. That was just an informal sketch.
Right.
However, there is an approved land development plan, preliminary approval, which theoretically would allow us under the MPC to start construction for phase 1.
That's correct.
Go ahead, Dave. I see your hand up there.
Are we still discussing number 3 on
Yes,
Boucher and James' letter?
yes.
Okay, so I think that this has to do with a public road going between two properties.
Yep.
And we're talking about, if it's approved as part of that development and later they sell it off. And I think that can be handled with the land development process, that any restrictions as part of this mixed-use development remain. And as you said, Scott, it becomes a restriction in the deed and on the plans.
Yeah.
So if they do sell it, into Jim's desire to maybe sell off lots of land, so what if it's under another ownership, as long as they meet the intent of this ordinance? Okay.
And it's very typical that when we do submit subdivision plans, that there is a note on there stating that this property cannot be re-subdivided without the approval of the township.
Well, that would be the case regardless.
Regardless.
What I'm saying is, if they do want to, let's say, 20 years down the road, somebody buys the property and they want to turn it into something else, as long as it meets the original intent of the mixed-use development ordinances, assuming they haven't been changed, then okay. But if they want to do something that's not allowed by the ordinance for this section 305, then no, they can't. And that just has to be written into the, this is all hoping that the Planning Commission in 20 years go back and looks at any deed restrictions and ordinances that are relevant.
Well, even if it's a recorded map note, it's a matter of it being recorded in the chain of title, and it'll show up no matter what. It shows up on the map, Dave,
Yeah.
when you search it.
So I don't see it as an issue. It's just that we just need to make sure that it's, if it's part of that mixed use development, that it stays with it, and they have to abide by those, requirements. And if somebody wants to buy it, and
That's all I'm asking.
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't see an issue with that.
We're in agreement.
All right.
Oh, wait a minute. I can't agree with you, Jim.
All right. So make it as a note on the plan, really. That's really what it has to be. It would have to be on a note it would have to be a note on the recorded on the recorded subdivision plan or anything. Let me strike that. It'd be a note on the plan recorded with the County Recorder of Deeds office. That's what lives.
Ron, you okay with that?
Yeah, that's very similar to what we do all the time with respect to combining lots.
Yeah, right.
We combine a lot, and then we want language that this lot cannot be further subdivided or split without further township approval, something to that effect. So that's fine with me. I'm okay with that.
Okay. All right, John, anything else, everybody, before we move on to 4? Okay, 4.
Number 4, the language, quote, for example, the construction of a new through road should be made a requirement for an early phase of development, close quote, has been removed from section 305.2D, paren 2. In addition, section 305.2E states, quote, where a mixed use development would be adjacent to 2 state roads, one new road that meets public street standards shall be required to be constructed that connects the 2 state roads, close quote. This would allow, so if these are removed, this would allow major portions of a project to move forward prior to constructing a connector road. Presumably the need for access to a new connector road would be the trigger for its construction. Also, would it be the intent to construct the connector road all at one time or in phases? I recall a through road was important to Smithfield Gateway and is still required as it is bounded by 2 state roads. However, will the township want a through road between 2 township roads should development with that scenario occur in the future? So these are just some things to think about if you remove that language.
I thought the road was getting built in the first step of this. That was my recollection.
It was.
Okay.
It was, and we have done well working with Pocono Mountain Economic Development. We finally got our TIF together, and our funding is in place for 70% of the loop road. And frankly, and also Route 209, turning that into 5 lanes. We have met with PennDOT, and we brought this up to the township that our funding is not in place for, except for emergency connection to the balance of the loop road to 447 and the 447 improvements. And frankly, the legislators who have been very supportive of our project have made it clear that they want to see progress being made with this project, and we're most confident that we'll proceed and we'll complete that connection. The 3 primary developments that we are moving under do not need that connection, but PennDOT has made it clear that they won't allow us to do any further development until that connection is made. So I think it's very important for everybody to understand that this project's been around for 25 years. We've only had it for 5. We've taken it the furthest, but this thing has got to get going and it'll gain momentum and the rest of that road will get built. or I won't be able to develop, 50 acres of this 93-acre development. And that won't be good.
Yes,
So-
Dave.
In this particular project, if DEPG didn't own the entire 100 plus or minus acres, and they only own that strip along 209, they would probably only do that back road and connect over to Music Center. They would have never even decided to put in the road all the way over to 447, because PennDOT would probably want them to remove all of those individual driveways. So I think in this situation, as long as he doesn't move forward with any of the future development, that connector road isn't really required.
May I make a comment?
Please, Doug.
Doug, that you?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah, this is.
No, I
Doug
know. Sometimes the boxes light up differently. Okay, yes, Doug.
Yeah, we, when I provided a document that compared the two ordinances, what's
Mm-hmm.
been approved and then what changes we were making and the rationale behind it, we made it clear that, that we definitely want to do the entire loop road. I mean, that's, we just need the funding to make sure that that's taken care of. And we also note that it's required by the regulations that each phase has to be able to stand on its own, so that if another phase never comes along after the first one is approved, it has the ability to, to be there. So we're proposing the loop road actually in three steps. The first one would go from 209 up to the intersection where it would connect with another road that would then loop back down to 209. The second step on the loop road would take it from that intersection and tie into the cul-de-sac for Shawnee Ridge. And then the third phase would be to redo that portion of the Shawnee Ridge Road that's already in existence and the improvements on 447. So we can't do the entire loop road until we make sure that the traffic signal is in place in 447, because PennDOT won't allow that. So it's not that we don't want to do it. We just, are asking that we be allowed to do it in phases, making sure that each phase has to stand on its own.
And as you know, Doug, Langen right now is doing a revised traffic study to show, how the impact of the phases and the loop road all work together.
That is correct. And the other item that we actually revision that John makes reference to in 305.2.e under his comment number 4, we're actually stating that the new road has to meet public street standards, public street being capitalized, because that has some specific criteria, meaning that it's either a state or a township road standard that has to be met. So we were just making it clear that that road has to be to the township specifications. So we have every intention of doing it. It's just that, the funds are, as it is, we've got 2 buckets of money that are being utilized to pay for the first 2 pieces. And then the third piece, we're still looking for that bucket. So if somebody knows of a rainbow nearby that might have a bucket at the end of it, let me know.
Well, I know what was said back at the beginning. You said back at the beginning, you're going to build the road first.
That was the original intent.
Right.
The roads cost a lot more than anticipated. And frankly, the funding, it is what it is. So believe me, PennDOT is said to us, we'll allow this phasing to take place, but you're only going to be able to develop so much of your ground until the road is complete. And we're sure that's what the traffic study is going to verify, which of course we'll make available to the township.
And the other comment that we had raised in our commentary with respect to the comparison is this connector road works very well for our property because of the way that it's laid out in the location of 447 versus 209. But there could be, an example where it's adjacent to, you've got two state roads where it really would not be practical to require a connector road to actually be constructed. So we just raised that as a question. Although our plan's not going to change. We're going to do that connector road. The question is, there may be possibilities. I don't know what the other parcels are. John, I don't know if there's two state roads that are abutting those possible other uses, and if it would make sense to have a connector road, but I could think of a number of different examples where you have two roads that are state roads that it just wouldn't make sense to have a connector road installed.
That's a fair point, Doug. I think that's a fair point with almost any ordinance requirement. Each piece of land is unique unto itself, and that's why they allow for variances and waivers. I think the primary issue here is what Mr. Amore has raised is, would the township be okay with developing the connector road in phases? Because that's really what it comes down to. You've agreed that it's going to be constructed. You've agreed to the standards that it's going to be constructed. I think the only open end at this point is when the entire road will be actually completed.
So the first phase encompasses about 30 acres, and there are two roads that form a loop. So it's very functional with Road A and Road B. It's very functional.
It provides not only that, Jim, it also provides the connection to Music Center.
Exactly, Road C. Thank you, Doug.
Yep.
Yes. So all those roads will be built as part of this initial development.
I think we've all agreed for the longest time, really, in principle, for all those things you just said, Jim.
Thank you.
Yeah. Am I right? I mean, I see Moses shaking his head, but
No, I was laughing at Dave.
Michael, do you agree? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if there's something that, for me, was sanctimonious about it being two state roads. I mean, it's about, there's a requirement that there be improved traffic in it. I don't know why it had to be there at all, that there had to be a connector road in the ordinance.
That was mostly driven, Mike, by PennDOT. That was mostly driven by PennDOT. But when, they looked at it, they want to see this 209 develop. They want to see this project move forward. They are asking Langen for traffic studies, which we're doing right now. But the fact is that the development is very functional with the three roads that we're building in the first phase.
Thanks, Dave.
Does that help?
Yep.
Yeah, I guess I'm saying I'm in agreement. I don't see why it has to be there in the ordinance, because I think the PennDOT will ensure that the traffic is appropriate. That's my feeling.
And Ron, really isn't the layout of the road or roads, that's really more of a plan submission, isn't it? Isn't it when we get to the actual development plan?
Well, it is, but remember, you're passing upon the underlying
Right.
regulation as to whether or not this connector road needs to be built first before you can proceed with the project, or whether you can proceed building this road in phases as long as the project, has proper access, etc. So you're step two. This is still step one. Is
right. So I would only poll the board here, poll the commission, real quick. How many of us, by show of hands, care one way or the other whether the road is built first or not, or whether it's only partially built first and then finished at some later date? Does anybody?
I guess my concern would be that if any point in this process, the developer stops? Will what has been completed stand on its own and be functional?
And I think if you remember, when I was talking about the phasing of the construction, it has to be done in such a way that each phase has to stand on its own, with the understanding that if that particular phase is not constructed, nothing else happens after that. It's going to be a cohesive unit as opposed to looking disjointed by having a road that goes to the middle of nowhere and then just stops.
Which was my initial comment when I started this. I said, if they were only developing that portion along 209, PennDOT would probably still make them put back access, which would be the two road A and B that he's proposing, and it would stand on its own.
That's correct.
Does that work, John Tressler?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I was under the impression that from their prior presentations that they were going to, as they submitted phases, one, each phase would be able to stand on its own, and two, the development of the collector road would proceed logically as the phases came in. I don't have a problem with that personally, but I felt obligated to point out to you that it was a change from what is currently in the ordinance.
Scott?
Gentlemen, could I say something? May I raise my hand here?
All right.
Our view is this. We want to get things going. We want to get something done. If the connector road is not built, we believe the connector road will be built at some point. But our view is, what can we build? What can we get going? Yesterday, we received a letter from PennDOT telling us that our entire Green Light Go grant, which was about $700,000, was canceled. Why? Because PennDOT doesn't have the money, they claim, because of the lack of gasoline taxes. So our feeling is, let's get going on this. Let's do what we can, and let's do it quickly before more of these cancellations come about. We know that part of this project has to depend on 209 being rebuilt next summer. And we want to make sure that that is done. And I think the faster we do something and the more we, let's say, facilitate what can be done, the better off we are. Thank you.
And you do that by submitting a plan, which we've never had. That's how you do it. Otherwise, there's nothing to go on. A project of this magnitude, what are you going to do? Submit a plan and 3 weeks later, we're going to say it's approved and we're out of here? Come on.
Well, actually, and our architect is on, in the Zoom call here. We have done plans. Okay, they are preliminary, but you don't go into land development before you have your zoning intact. I mean, that's 101 in development. So yes, with the zoning, we will proceed into land development.
And that's actually, and that would be a revision, Jim, to
That's right.
to phase 1B. I mean, there is an approved plan for phase 1B right now, but that contemplated a big box.
And Doug, it shows the roads are basically the same, right? The connections are the same.
They are.
There is a plan, okay? And we would certainly circulate it tomorrow if anyone on the planning.
Not circulate. It has to be filed.
No.
So that we can review
We have an approved plan from the township.
Thank you.
And we have an ordinance from the township, Doug. You keep asking for it to be changed.
Well,
So that we can revise phase 1B.
right. Listen, we all know why we're here, right? We're here because a large anchor tenant decided to pick up their marbles and go to the Stroud Mall. It completely changed the focus of this. We believe we actually have a better plan that will pay more tax revenue to the township, will be higher quality. But this was a serious setback, and I think we rebounded pretty good. And we're going to continue with it. And it's actually a plan. If you remember 4 years ago, what the Planning Commission wanted us to do, but we were pretty steadfast on building a 70, 80,000 foot food store with a big, ugly parking lot in front of it. So I think today we're here to move a project that's going to make everyone in the community a lot more proud of.
And Scott, to your point about not having a plan, I agree with what they're saying is they're not going to go through the full land development plan without knowing for sure that the zoning ordinances allows it. So that's the position they're in. So we're not acting on a plan, we're acting on the ordinance changes.
And as I said earlier, I think pretty much got everybody's head nodding in agreement that this, in principle, should move forward. So,
Thank you.
and at least move forward to the next item on John's list.
Number 5.
Number 5, I'm listing some changes that are made that allows for slightly different uses. I'll go through them. You can stop me or I'll continue through. Section 305.3A, the following uses have been added or expanded. Subsection 7, daycare uses now include both child or adult. Subsection 8, assisted living facilities now include personal care homes and nursing homes. For section 305.4, I can't read it. My
L.
10% of the total land area of the tract may be an assisted living facility, personal care home, or nursing home. Subsection 11, entertainment uses now include both indoor and outdoor areas for special community events. Subsection 12 has been added and includes one family attached dwellings, one
And I
family.
think that's the part,
semi-detached
John, I think that's the part that they, in your first page, I think they
pulled
removed
it.
that
They
part. of it.
pulled
Yeah,
that.
that one's
Yep.
out.
But the other family use,
The other
the other uses are there. It's just the one family detached
Right.
was removed.
That language was
The
pulled
one
out.
family detached, yeah.
Right.
And then, the community center part, okay. Anything
Right,
on
so-
any comment on those? Those seem perfectly
I
okay.
was asking, where did the nursing home and assisted living part crop in? How did that happen? Jim.
Give me a second. Hang on.
Just so you know, the upper part of that property that I don't think is part of this, but the Petrus's land, it still has an approved assisted living or nursing home or something up there. That was submitted years ago.
But this has to do with Jim's project, though, doesn't it?
I understand, but there is one contiguous to it.
Oh,
And the school district.
We're trying to just, round out all the potential uses that this could be, and it's a large mixed-use project. It's not that we're planning on that, but it may be something that comes along that's advantageous. Certainly, the senior market is very, very big today,
yep.
and we want to be able to take advantage of it.
And you'd like to write that into the ordinance is basically what you're
Yeah, so we cover all those contingencies
Right.
that might be available for ours or another tract if it gets submitted under this type of use.
Okay, thanks, Doug.
And that certainly wouldn't impact the school district.
No, yep.
I think we can move on to the next one.
Okay, number 6 is simple. The section 305.3 C1B should be revised to include the language, quote, minimum tract size, close quote, as outlined in the comparison of changes. Comment number 7, for residential uses, section 305.3 C, paren 1, paren D, has been added and states, quote, a condominium or a closely similar form of ownership shall be allowed provided there is compliance with the Pennsylvania Uniform Planned Community Act and/or the Pennsylvania Uniform Condominium Act, both as amended. I mean, this is simply ownership.
Yeah, I was a question on that because condominiums are those are deeded interests.
Right.
That's they're fee simple interest in the condominiums. Is that going to be a problem,
As
Ron,
opposed
for any
to
of
a
this?
co-op.
As opposed to a co-op or straight up apartment building.
So when you say similar, do you mean condominium or co-op and or co-op? Because there's really nothing similar to, I mean, a co-op is not similar to a condominium,
No,
right, Scott?
no, it's not. That's a co-op. You're buying into the whole.
Right.
It's a little different. Are you planning on selling condominiums, or is this going to be a rental project, Jim?
I think that, no, the mixed use section, what we call phase 1B, are rentals. I believe that the phase 2A, which is the residential on the hill, that could see condos. They haven't been overly successful. The first section, we're definitely looking at townhouses, but as you go up, there may be potential of building condos, and it seems to be the market may be, accepting that more, but it's not been a good market,
And and so then the common elements and the limited common elements of the condo will still be under the same common ownership, like we've been talking about. That's going to be the same owner developer type language you think of in a typical condominium.
For sure, it may be a separate developer than the developer doing the townhouses, but they'll be controlled. There'll be maintenance agreement, cross easement agreements, and all of that.
And it's fully understood that as part of the land development approval process, any of those documents would be submitted to the township for their review.
Right.
You're right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. 8.
For section 305.3C.5, an unenclosed porch or deck for each dwelling may extend a maximum of 10 feet into the 30-foot separation distance provided above. And my only comment is a determination should be made if this is sufficient distance between a residential unit with a 10-foot wide balcony and a commercial unit. I believe it was permitted by code. It should be okay, but I don't have that answer myself.
I think that's just a market thing for and an architectural thing, however they want to do it. I don't think that's something.
And a building code thing. If the building.
Yeah,
code
I don't think that's
allows
something. I don't think that's something we have, Michael. I agree. Yeah.
As long
If
as
it sums up to code, it's code. Then.
Yeah, but it's got to allow passage of fire apparatus too.
Yeah, well, if it's part of the building code, Doug, then that's going to be
Yeah,
included as
okay.
part of the building code approval. I don't
Very
see
good.
any problem with that.
All right.
Let's move on to the next page.
For section 305.3E, multi-use buildings, for example, commercial with residential, are now permitted.
Right.
I think they're contemplating commercial below, residential above, if I'm correct, Doug.
Yes, that is correct, sir.
I think that's what we've been contemplating for the last couple of years with our economic development revisions anyway.
Probably big thumbs up from the planning commission on that.
Yeah,
one.
that's actually, you're going to get a big smile out of me on that one, Jim.
All right, we'll take it.
Okay.
Well, mixed use, baby.
Yeah.
Number 10, section 305.4.B.1 now permits 20% of the required parking spaces between a state road right-of-way and the nearest principal building. 10% was previously permitted.
What does that mean?
Yeah, I was going to say, what is that about?
Before, you were only allowed to have 10% of the parking spaces for a building between the building and Route 209.
Right.
We're
That's how we
asking-
wanted it.
We're asking for 20%, specifically to address the tenant request for the 40,000 square foot office building that we want to put in phase 1A.
Right.
Yes, that is specific for them. Yes.
Now, I did think you
And if-
said, Doug, that you're going to provide 3-foot screening between the road and the.
I think it's required by the ordinance.
Yeah.
As is spacing and the
So-
beautification.
Yeah, so you're required to screen whatever parking you have anyway, and if screening is going to be provided, that's why we're saying, well, if you're going to be providing the screening, we're requesting that we're able to go to 20% as opposed to the 10%. Now, it only addressed that one particular structure because the adjacent
Right.
retail structure, I don't think has any parking, does it, Jim, in the front?
It's right up on the road.
Right.
And in fact, the 40,000 foot user is not far set back. It's very close to the road.
Right.
It's just needed, we just need this small change.
Any thoughts, anybody?
Seems like a minor tweak.
Yeah, that doesn't strike me as I mean, keeping 80, at least keep 80% of your.
It was 10, it
your
went from 10
parking.
to 90, that's different.
Yeah, right. That I agree with Michael on that. Anybody, any thoughts?
This is Ron Karasak, and you should just know that the applicant, out of all the amendments, really wants to move with this one because they have a proposed tenant in phase 1A, which has been given, I believe, the preliminary approval for phase 1A, and they would like to get this adopted like yesterday, even if the other changes are going to take a little more of a while, at least to my understanding when we had a joint meeting to discuss these amendments a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, and that's why you actually had two separate proposed ordinances related to the mixed use. One of them was only a 2-page ordinance addressing just this one singular issue.
Okay.
And then the other one addressed all of the other items that we were talking about this evening. So it's our hope that we'd be able to get a recommendation, even if we'd like to get recommendations on all this stuff, but it as a minimum tonight, would like to get a recommendation on the one proposed ordinance addressing this one item.
Yes.
Because then that could move to the Board of Supervisors so they can set the hearing, and then we can get that particular item changed if the hearing is successful, and then we can get the lease signed.
So Doug, if
Yes,
we,
sir.
if we, as a planning commission, were to send this Boucher and James letter with our recommendations along to the Board of Supervisors, that would accomplish that objective, no?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we're not done. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
I think we agreed that that was relatively de minimis. Is that the right
What
word?
are the number of spaces we're talking about? Do we know?
I don't know what you need for 40,000 square foot building.
Let me see if I can pull up a plan and count the spaces while we're talking.
I'm
All
just
right?
curious. Thanks.
That's all right. Let's move on to number 11 while you're doing that.
Okay.
Maximum building height to 60 feet.
Yes. Previous was 45.
The biggest reason that we had this in the ordinance was the fire department's ability to access the upper floors. But that was before buildings had smoke detectors and fire alarm systems and sprinkler systems. I think these buildings will have that. And the building codes allows that. It's just in our ordinance does not.
And we have recently approved, I believe, another building in our township for close to that, right? Wasn't the
Well, that was a
Vigon?
Vigon building, but this has to do with the highest level of the floor for them to access. There's nobody on that 50-foot mark on that building. Everybody's on the lower floor.
Right.
Yeah.
So gentlemen, our architect, Chris Bauer, is with us. And Chris, why don't you, because you were present when this was spoke about, why don't you just mention how you've taken this in consideration in terms of fire vehicles being able to accommodate the upper floors, if you would. Chris Bauer from CI Architects.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna unmute myself here. So all the buildings meet the height required for your fire department, other than the side of the retail. That was only the side that we were 3 feet higher than the current ladders that they have. But the buildings will be fully to code and sprinklered So they will meet building code. And I know David's on the call too from my office, so he can also speak to that as well if needed.
Yeah, I can elaborate. Hey guys, this is Dave Marcos, UCI Design. I can elaborate a little bit on that.
Oh, there you are.
So
All right.
the yes, the parts of the building that we're specifically are the highest points are the residences that happen above the retail portion of the building. Now, this portion also, as the site terraces down, this portion does have access on the higher terrace to for fire truck access, which only is a maximum of it's actually under 30 feet. Actually, I take it back. It's 32 feet to the roof at the back part of these specific buildings. So we, again, as Chris said, everything will be compliant to codes, and we don't see any concern. And we actually will be discussing this with the fire marshal as well for their approval.
Very good. Thank you, Dave and Chris.
Yep, thanks.
Thanks, Matthew. Oh, give me 1 second, guys. Thank you. There you go.
I don't have anybody bringing me drinks.
Yeah.
Louise.
That would be the first thing that my 17-year-old boys brought me in months.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
All right.
Are we ready to move on, Scott?
Yeah, I say we move on.
Yeah.
Comment number 12 is a reduction in height for the residential buildings from 45 down to 40, with the caveat that they can have like a parapetter that would have decorative peak roofs or mechanical areas on top.
Okay.
I think that sort of goes along with the things we've been talking about with
Yeah.
sort of architecturally interesting, something that's not,
Yeah.
I think so. Okay.
Yep.
13.
Per section 305.4.E.2, each phase of residential development will now be permitted a community center.
We want that as permitted or required?
I think we actually have it as required.
Yeah, I thought so, somewhere in there. I thought so.
Okay, that may be my mistake. Okay.
I thought I saw it in there.
Comment 14, assuming you're okay with 13, for section 305.4.E.3, the number of bedrooms in each dwelling unit is limited to 2, with a minimum of 50% of all dwelling units required to have only 1. And this is being proposed to limit the impact on the local school districts.
And that was a change from the original approval, right, Doug?
Yeah, that the original approval was about 2/3, 1/3. 2/3 being allowed to have 2-bedroom and 1/3 at 1-bedroom.
So that addresses, Scott, some of your, there's obviously more residential now. However, because of this change, it limits the amount that's increased on our school system property tax.
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I mean, we're going to do so much with whatever the school system is. It's mostly a difference between, we're talking about a maximum of adding 600 or 700 residents or about 11 or 1,200 overall. That's really what we're talking about here. So, I mean, I'm okay with how you want to propose it. It's however you want to do your apartments.
All right, John, before you go on to the next one, I pulled up that section about the community center. It states that each phase with a residential use shall include a community center.
I thought I saw it in there. Okay.
And then the other item, that first section in phase 1A has a total of 241 spaces. 20% would be at 49, and we've got 42 spaces in between the building and 209, again, which has to be screened from 209 in accordance with the regulations.
Thanks.
Regulations, Scott Amori, require what, 3 foot, or John, 3 foot?
I don't know offhand. I thought I remember somebody mentioning 3 foot.
It is 3 foot.
I think it's 3.
That's a little low. How about 6?
Be-
The idea behind the 3 foot was to make sure that if there's a car headed parked so that its
Exactly.
headlights are going towards the road,
Right.
that the 3 foot would
Right.
That's the idea.
stop that, but it would
And-
still provide the visibility of
I'm not-
the building behind it.
I'm not gonna haggle, that's fine.
The other thing too, and again, this ordinance is being written for more than this particular development, but in the proposal that is before you with the 40,000 square foot building, if I recall correctly, Doug, actually this is two tiers of parking. So you've got one tier behind the other. So the actual number right up against the road is less than 42. Am I correct?
Yeah, that 42 is pretty much evenly split between what's right up against 209 and then what's up against the building.
So really, you only have 20 some against 209.
Where on 209 is this building, if I may ask?
Hold on 1 second here.
Sorry to belabor the point. I'm just
No, that's all right. This building would be right across the street from the Dairy Queen.
okay.
But set back a ways.
No, it's actually relatively close to the road.
But I thought you said there were 42 parking spaces between it and the road.
Yeah, well, it's about 65 feet off of the
Right,
Yeah,
set
the right
back.
of way line.
That's set back that way.
But
from
there's
there.
a lot of parking behind it.
Yeah, we know, yeah.
80%, right.
Okay, next.
Moving on.
15.
Per section 305.4.f, 0.5 paren E, and 305.4.f.6 paren D, vinyl siding is now permitted on portions of buildings not visible from a public street and up to 30% of exterior sides of a building that are visible from a public street. Vinyl siding can be used up to 70% of the exterior side of a townhouse that is visible from the street.
What was it before?
Yeah.
Doug, can you answer that?
Yeah, let me just get to that section.
I thought you were using different materials on this project, Jim. When did the vinyl siding
Yes.
sneak in?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Chris, why don't you add to that? I mean, basically, the idea is, no, we're not using vinyl all over. It's a mixture of elevation. So why don't you discuss that? Because this is going to be upper scale, and we certainly want it to be designed that way.
The current ordinance says no vinyl siding.
Yeah, so we wanted the opportunity to be able to use vinyl in areas like in the balcony areas and up high at a touch and feel. So really everything you'd be able to see, touch, and feel would be a higher end material like masonry and hardy panel type materials. We just typically on the residential jobs, we do use vinyl and on areas like on the back of buildings and stuff that aren't visible.
But you're
Yes.
saying 70% of the exterior of a townhouse that is visible. would
Yeah,
have
should
vinyl.
that say not visible?
Yeah, right. That's good, Bob.
That was my hand was up, John.
Yeah,
Is the
so yeah.
30% visible, 70% not visible. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, I think maybe I forgot the not.
Add the word not. Okay.
Yeah, up to 70%.
Oh, okay.
That
No.
is not visible. Yeah, that makes a difference.
Oh, that makes it better.
That does. All right. All right. Anybody else? 16 before we move on? Or 15 before we move on to 16? Okay, 16, bike racks. Okay,
Yeah, we just agree, provide them.
all right.
And 17,
Yes.
last comment, the disturbance of moderately steep slopes is now proposed to be 80% for residential, office, and industrial development. The previous disturbance was 60%.
What does that actually mean? It means you can
Yeah.
disturb 60% or 80% of the slopes?
So it
Or-
says that you may.
Yeah.
No, but this, I mean, you may, of the slope, of the slopes, right? Not the degree of the slope.
Right. Now, I mean, if
So
if you recall,
Yeah. Let me just explain one thing that originally the apartments were on the hill, right? Now, they've now been moved and we've committed to the school district and Smithfield Township that that site on the hill would not be apartments, that they would be age restricted. So when we got into this with a really quality developed builder, they, you know, the reaction was, well, Jim, you can't have age restricted and, you know, have 30 steps. I mean, that site is very treacherous to develop on. So I think, Doug, that the change here is to accommodate the changes that we are going to need to do to create, you know, relatively easy to use age restricted houses without a lot of steps, or otherwise they won't sell.
That is correct, because the design for age restricted units usually require that the basic living takes place on the first level, including the bedrooms. And you want to be able to have access, you know, without a lot of steps. So it requires a lot more grading in that area in order to make that accommodation to make sure that the school district didn't get too upset with us.
Any thoughts on that?
And obviously all that has to be done, you know, in conjunction with and in accordance with meeting all of the NPDS rules and regulations and the E&S rules and regulations in order to do any of the construction work.
But the views are going to be magnificent. We think we're going to really add a quality residential age restricted development there.
I have a comment. You know, we wrote into the ordinances to reduce the amount of disturbance of steep slopes, mainly because of a couple of properties along 209 where the Dairy Queen is and further down across from Alaska Pete's, because we didn't want that type of raping of the land to occur anymore. And I mean, for me to agree to this, I'd like to know better. What does that mean? Does that mean they're going to create another quarry there to take all that stuff out and it's going to flatten it?
Why don't you explain a little bit what Langen has proposed? And it's still going to be very much on a hill. But it just it has to work. It has to work in order to have units marketable.
Well, I understand what you're saying, Jim, but my concern is, you know, we're looking at this beyond your development. And I don't want to take another property someplace and have it turned into a quarry again.
Well, could a phrase be added, increasing from 60 to 80%, subject to the approval of the township? And then if somebody is coming with a quarry, you know, you'll see it coming.
Yeah.
The problem is, Doug, is that it's oftentimes not a quarry per se. It's land development or land clearing or land preparation.
Lot prep.
What you wind up with is a quarry. You wind up with the builder, the developer taking out material.
I know because of the property that's across the street from Alaska Pete's that had a land development approval and it ended up being a quarry.
That's right.
Exactly. And you look at the Dairy Queen,
that's one of many.
That was a land development, and now it's been sitting like that now for going on 15 years.
15 years, absolutely.
Okay, let me ask Doug. I should know the answer to this, but I'll admit I don't. This is a section in the mixed use ordinance overlay district. This is not altering our slope requirements found elsewhere in the zoning ordinance. Am I correct?
That is correct.
So these other parcels that we're talking about would not be permitted to use this because they're not a mixed use development.
Yet.
Yeah.
Well, they've got to have the acreage. We said there's only one or two other.
It's too open-ended.
Yes.
Why not just take the restricted housing and put it above the retail?
No, that's the market rate apartments that are above the retail. This site on the hill is extremely difficult to develop. It would have been great apartments, but you know, they weren't going to work mixed use. This site 1B, where ShopRite was going to go, works beautifully for mixed use. In many respects, we have parking that doesn't compete with each other. So
Yeah, I think, yeah, what Jim is saying, it rightly so, is that if you're going to put age-restricted housing up on the hill in the original 236, whatever they were, units, if that's going to become age-restricted, then to have them on a steep slope is probably not going to work for people who are of an age.
Let me just say, it's still going to be on a steep slope, but as Doug said, we're going to accommodate it so that the bedrooms will be on the ground floor. Otherwise, you'd have 10, 12 steps to get to the first floor, and that is not marketable.
Right.
So,
yeah. So there's going to be some cutting. You're going to have to cut that.
No, I want to make sure everyone understands this is not going to be a gully or anything. This is still going to be a very steep development, and they're just doing certain cuts to allow the units to go into the side of the hill and have the bedroom on the ground floor. Is that correct, Doug?
The dash line is the steep slope, and what we'd be doing with that area, you know, through excavation and fill in some areas with retaining walls, et cetera, provides for basically stepping the real estate coming down that slope so that you'd be able to construct townhouses in the appropriate roads so that everybody has access at the first level without having to go up a set of steps.
I agree with, I understand what you're trying to do, and I think that in the end would look okay, but my concern is how is this interpreted when the next development comes forward and they want to do a major clearing and have a big scar? How can we rewrite this so that it gives you what you want, but doesn't give it an open to the next developer?
Doug suggested language, didn't you, Doug? I thought you suggested language that would cover that.
Isn't the issue, Doug, that this site is on a hill, and if this was a flat site, then yeah, maybe somebody could cut it down, but maybe you're the engineer, so but maybe you could say if you have a site that is on a hill, you could do certain cuts to it that would make it distinctly different than someone who had a flat site and they were going to dig a gully or to create more units.
I think it's more along the lines of if Dave, I think more of what you're thinking of in the event that there are moderately steep slopes, if you are going to build age-restricted units, you are permitted to deviate from the 60% disturbance to 80% disturbance. I think that's really what you're looking for, Dave.
Yeah,
you can only do it if you're doing it. Is that what you're trying to get at? Maybe that's a better way to approach it. If it's going to be for an age-restricted development, then you can get some relief from the slope.
Doug, are there any other major cuts that we're having? I don't think we're doing it, Chris, on 1B section. Is it only here, Doug, that we're talking about getting relief here?
I believe so, Jim, but until I could actually pull out the plans and look at the percentages of what we're dealing with as far as the amount of disturbance, I don't want to say, yes or no one way or the other until I would have a chance to verify it.
I'd be okay with the disturbance change if it was going to be for age-restricted housing only.
Doug, this is Ron Karasak. What's moderately steep mean? Is it 15 to 25 or it's some other number? If
I
you know.
believe it's, I believe that is defined as that in the ordinance. That
Yeah,
might
our
have,
ordinance
Steve
has.
is, yeah, it's defined in the ordinance.
Do you know
And I
what that
bel-
percentage is?
60.
John Tressler, do you know what it is?
No, that's what I said. I mean, it's 60% in the existing mixed use ordinance, but
Right.
if you go elsewhere in the township, I think it could be different. I don't know what it is.
It's not that much. That's a very high number. So we're
Right.
basically, the way this is written now, they're allowed to create another quarry,
Yes.
the way I see it.
Well,
And
well,
it needs to be rewritten to not allow that. And I don't know how to do that.
Right.
well, perhaps you can agree to what the chairman proposed, which is that we'll let you do this as long as you're constructing age restricted development or units. Now, the applicant may not like that, but that can be your recommendation if you want to do that in order to prevent the quarry, the scarring, the major clearing out issues that may have been discussed.
Is this one of those things where if the township doesn't feel comfortable in making this particular one change across the board, that the developer can request a variance at land development time?
Well, the
Or
developer
no,
can always request a variance of its zoning or of the zoning.
Well,
ordinance.
let me ask a question here. Sort of a rhetorical question. Is a quarry permitted in a mixed use development? I think the answer is no.
No.
And since this particular section only applies to a mixed use development, you're not going to have a quarry.
Yeah, but across from Alaska Pete, it's not a quarry either.
Yes, that's correct.
It's a land development.
Well,
That's how
It's not a mixed use
it's
development.
surface mining. They have a surface mining
Yeah,
permit.
right.
Quarry.
Well,
But
that,
what about the Dairy Queen? That's not a quarry either. But they're basically, there was a beautiful hill there, and they leveled it.
Took it down.
And this is the Pocono Mountains, not the Pocono Prairies.
Dave, I understand, but that occurred before you had the current zoning in place.
Yeah, we know. We don't want it to happen again, John.
And I understand, but what I'm saying is that this, I just want to make sure you understand that this is not changing the steep slope requirements elsewhere in the township.
Understood. It's only in a mixed use.
No, I
but
know that.
still,
Yes.
it's still that allows them, the way I read it, they can take 80% of the moderate slope and level it. And I want to find a
Well,
way to still to maintain the character of the land.
It's different. The fact is that this site, what we call phase 2A, is not going to be a gully. In fact, it's going to be, raising in height from the loop road all the way up to the top.
Right.
So there's only cuts in different sections. There has to be some engineering terminology that can be used because we're not digging a hole here. We're just digging plateaus. As this road goes up, there'll be certain plateaus that are cutting. In no way are we creating a hole.
Jim, I understand what you're trying to do, but I'm looking beyond it. My only concern is beyond your development for the next one that comes along.
So is there a way to, the two engineers here, is there a way to describe this where if the site maintains an elevation and you're only disturbing certain plateaus to create livable units, then it works?
Because we can get beyond it by in the motion that we go forward with, that we ask the engineer and the supervisors to pay close attention to number 17, to provide language that protects future development of excessive excavation.
I think that's an excellent idea, Dave. I hate to agree with you again. But
Doug, what did you suggest earlier, Doug?
Because I know that this is what we're doing. When they get together and look at what Langen proposed, it's not going to be an issue because
and I understand that. It's just, again, I'm looking beyond it. So.
Doug,
I originally threw out the idea that if you're going to go above 60%, it would be any disturbance between 60 and 80% has to be reviewed by the township.
Right. Yeah.
Well, again, that's language that you guys can can figure out later and doesn't need to hold up our action moving forward. I'm just expressing my concern over that one.
Agreed. And then it also gives us a time to check on the percentage slopes that we're dealing with and whether it just affects phase 2A or if it affects any of the other areas.
I'll be right back.
So
My battery's dying. I'll be right back.
Hey, Doug?
Yes, sir.
Why don't you check the maximum cut that you need as well? I mean, we could limit it by, 80%, providing that there's no more than a maximum of X number of feet of cut in any one location. And I think that would go along, that would certainly prevent a quarry.
Yep.
And it would prevent you from leveling a steep hill all the way down to a level site. That would almost guarantee that you would get a plateau.
Right.
Okay, you coming from that end. That's actually better than mine.
One thing, it's going to be the height of these units that are going to sell these units.
Right.
So we want to preserve that.
Well, we get it. I'll point out, David mentioned the Poconos. The Poconos are famous for steep slopes. Go up and have a look at Buck Hill. We're good with steep slopes. We've had a tradition of building residential development of homes on cliffs practically. So, I mean, it's doable, and you'd need a bulldozer, for some things. And in this case, I think we all agree, as long as the abuse doesn't become the norm.
Right.
The quarry, the level spot, and let me also just quickly before we go on, point out that in every case that I know of where there's been construction and slopes have been moved or changed, in every case, the developer has removed the material and sold it. So technically speaking, they're all quarries, David.
Okay. Let's take that idea, John and Doug, and you guys get together and come up with a solution. I think that's a good one.
We have to come up with a motion, no?
We got to come up with a motion. I was just going to say that's the next thing.
Yes.
All right. I think we have general consensus on on 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
9 for
9
sure.
and like 9 to 16, right?
Yeah.
Does that sound correct? That sound about right? All right. Then I say we start. Let's start there. Who wants to make a motion? Let me start. I make a motion that we recommend to the supervisors the amendments to the zoning ordinance proposed by the developer as detailed in the May 6th letter of Boucher and James on the following numbers within that letter: number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, that as a planning commission, we recommend approval on those items. That'll be my motion. Anybody? Second?
What was wrong with
Second that. Oh,
I'm sorry, what was that, Michael?
No, go ahead. Second it first. Go ahead.
Okay, now any discussion? Yes?
What about 17?
Well, 17 was the one we're gonna get to. We're gonna do 17 separately.
Separate motion.
Yeah, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do the number separately. Let's do the ones we have
what
general
about-
consensus on first.
What about numbers 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah, we're gonna get to them.
Okay.
I'm talking about only the ones here we're doing on, that we have, that we otherwise have consensus.
So you're recommending that the developer or that the ordinance incorporate these changes?
Yes, that is correct. And I think it was, who seconded it? Somebody did.
Well, I started, I think Michael did. That's
Okay.
fair.
What did you, I'm sorry if I missed a number. Was it just 4 through 16? Or was it
Yes.
one?
4 through
Yes.
16.
16, yes.
Yeah, but when you say number 4, we're going to allow them to remove that language about the construction of the new road be made.
That's the one that's about 2 state roads. Yes.
Yeah, so that one, we're not agreeing with the.
Oh, we're not
engineer.
agreeing with that one. Okay, then we'll go 5 through 16.
I thought we were agreeing with that. I thought we
We'll
basically.
do it
Yeah.
separately. Guys, we'll
I just, my number 4 just states what they're doing, and I offered a comment for discussion. I don't object to the language.
Okay. Well, just to be clear, we're okay with that language being taken out.
So we're gonna go, are we gonna go 4 to 16
4
or
through
5 to 16?
16.
Yes.
4 through 16, all right.
All right, that's motion 1. It's
That's-
already been seconded.
It's been seconded. We've had some additional discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, aye. Okay, that one's passed. Let's go back to,
Well, 1 is not irrelevant. Is not.
one is
relevant.
no, yeah, one is no longer relevant because the single family has been removed.
So I don't think we need to say anything about it.
I don't think we need to say anything about that one either. Number
Or is
2,
it-
I think, is a technical matter. I don't think that matters. The using the word shop in it. Is that okay?
Yep.
All right. So we can leave that. And then we're on to number
3.
3.
Common ownership.
I don't think we really need to do anything because that's all going to be handled in the,
I think that what we do is I'm going to make a motion that we recommend approval number 3 with the following condition, that there be a note entered on any plan that that is to be recorded in the Monroe County Recorder of Deeds office, stating that that the plan is, any plan approval is contingent on the common ownership.
common ownership or the meeting the requirements of the
Meeting requirements of mixed use.
mixed use development.
Reading the mixed use development, that one.
Yeah.
Let's restate that. And I note that a note be entered on that the recommend approval with a note on on the plan to be recorded. What did you just say, Michael? I want to add that in.
I said that a note be recorded that
Yes.
the use be abide by the requirements of the mixed use or something to that
Of the
effect.
mixed use, of the mixed use ordinance. Okay. Any second?
Second.
Okay, any additional discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, ayes have it. 17. The next fly in the ointment.
So I could say, well, make a motion to approve the change to allow disturbance of what was 80% with the condition that the engineers get together to include language around what was the degree of the cut? Is that what you said, John?
John?
The depth of
amount-
the cut, maximum depth of the cut.
The amount of
The
cut that would be required.
That the amount of the cut be kept to a minimum so as to sort of assure that the new language ensures that there are no quarries or surface land mining that might be possible in future mixed use developments.
Very good. And,
All right.
and maybe say cuts, plural, because you're really talking about stepping, right, Jim? I mean, you're talking
And
about
Doug-
almost terracing, right?
Doug was going to look into what those cuts would be and make sure that it enables
Right.
the.
And the
the-
engineers would get together and shape some language. Okay.
Yep.
I think the intent of what we're looking for here is to come to an agreement from an engineering standpoint to satisfy what everybody heard was what the planning commission is trying to accomplish. And then we'll just coordinate that language with the township solicitor and the board of supervisors.
Right.
Okay. So we have the motion, we have it seconded. I don't think we need any further discussion, anything? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Everybody? Okay. I think that concludes tonight's marathon. Anything
Mr.
else?
Chair, who
Yes.
was the second on that last motion? I apologize.
Michael made it and Bob Moses was second.
Got it. Thank you.
Well, you guys did this just in time because wife and daughter have broken out the wine, so.
Is your stuff done in the microwave?
Yeah.
That's
We're
awesome.
ready.
All right.
We're ready.
Here was I was concerned. I put my cigar out before we came.
Yeah. Very good.
All
Thank
right,
you all for
everybody.
your support. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good job, Jacob. Good job putting it together.
Okay.
Thanks, Jake. Yeah.
Now, before we sign off, one second here. I think we're still scheduled. We're probably still going to be scheduled for our next regular meeting on the second Thursday. I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to guess it's probably going to be in person by then. All right. I think the rest of this is going to be over with. And
We can
it's
already
gonna
have
be,
25 people as of this Friday.
I'm sorry, what?
We can already have 25 people as of this Friday. Tomorrow.
Yeah, right. I think we can do it in person, and frankly, I'd rather do it that way.
Me too.
All right. That's what we'll
We
do.
have to make, now, mind you, if we're still in yellow, we have to make amendments because if there was a big event and 50 people wanted to show up to listen to the public forum, they're not allowed in. So just keep that in mind.
Well, we'll have to then make that's Jake's technical in there because there's going to have to be some sort of broadcast availability for it
Oh,
because,
yeah. we'll be ready.
because it has to be that way.
You need a 100-inch screen outside the building,
Yeah,
in the parking lot.
we'll make
right?
some sort of something for it, but it's going
There you go.
because if there's going to be public participation,
I
Do you need a
think,
permit for that, Doug?
I think you do.
Probably
I
do.
think we're,
We'll
I
have to
think
cut
we're,
the hill back in order to put a screen in.
yeah,
I,
really.
I think we're flattering ourselves if we think there's going to be a crowd.
Yeah, right. Thanks, Bob. All right, I make a motion. We
Remember-
adjourn.
Remember,
I'll
we
second
can do
that.
this, we can do this in person and by Zoom at the same time.
Yeah,
We've done
that's what
this-
I was saying, to make it some
Sure.
variety, be able to broadcast.
Absolutely.
I want it that way.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we're there. We broadcast on YouTube. Okay.
Yeah,
sounds
I
good.
want it
I
that way.
second on the adjourning.
Doug seconds on the adjourning. We are adjourned. Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Amen. We're out of here.
John,
All right,
I have a
everybody.
question unrelated to